For many Americans, the routine task of visiting the motor vehicle department to renew their car's license plate every 1 to 2 years is a mundane but necessary chore. It's an experience marked by long lines, tedious paperwork, and the occasional frustration when somebody's talking on speakerphone just loudly enough to where their conversation is now yours. The bright lights overhead hum a constant reminder that this is a world far removed from the sleek, minimalist design that Apple co-founder Steve Jobs was known to obsess over. However, for the tech icon himself, Steve Jobs, this common errand became an opportunity to exploit a little-known loophole in California's license plate law. So let's take a look at the good and the bad, and ultimately find out how Steve Jobs pulled off this seemingly impossible trick in arguably the most strict state in America. Jobs' love for cars was a reflection of his deep appreciation for design, innovation, and precision. In his early days of Apple, his attention to detail and pursuit of perfection were legendary. This passion extended to his personal vehicle, a silver Mercedes-Benz SL55 AMG, which perfectly maintained his minimalist aesthetic. It was a symbol of harmony between form and function that he valued so deeply. He preferred to lease the car. The problem Jobs faced was that in California, all vehicles were required to display license plates. It was a regulation that clashed directly with his vision for luxurious sports cars. But Jobs was never one to accept the status quo, as he soon discovered a clever workaround. You see, California law allowed for a 6-month grace period before newly registered vehicles needed to have plates distributed. Jobs recognized this as an opening, as he began a routine of constantly leasing a new Mercedes every 6 months. This allowed him to avoid having to display license plates altogether, preserving the sleek look of his beloved automobile. The history of California license plate law dates back all the way to the early 20th century, when automobiles first became widespread. In 1905, California became one of the first states to require vehicle registration, though actual license plate weren't mandatory until 1914. The 6-month grace period that Jobs exploited wasn't always a part of the law. It was introduced in 1960s, primarily to accommodate new car dealerships and give them time to process paperwork and receive permanent plates from the DMV. This grace period was seen as a practical solution to the logistic challenges of a rapidly growing automotive market in California. Throughout the decades, California license plate laws evolved to address changing needs and challenges. For instance, in the 1970s, the state introduced specialized plates for disabled drivers, and in the 1980s, personalized vanity plates became very popular. The loophole Jobs exploited existed decades way before he took advantage of it. It's worth noting that while Jobs' use of this loophole became famous, he wasn't the only one to discover or use it. Interestingly, the law remained unchanged for years even after Jobs' strategy became well known. It wasn't until 2016, 5 years after Jobs' death, that California legislators finally moved to close this loophole. The resulting law went into effect in 2019, now required temporary plates to be displayed on newly purchased vehicles, effectively ending the practice of driving without any visible registration. The change in law not only closes a loophole, but also addresses a more serious concern: unidentified vehicles involved in hit-and-run incidences. The new law was actually named after a victim of a hit-and-run accident involving a car without license plates. While he wasn't exactly breaking the law, he was certainly exploiting it in a way that went against its spirit. However, this raised several legal and ethic questions. But before we continue, a quick word from today's sponsor, Aura. Now, despite me only talking about car news, I wanted to talk about the recent data breach of over 2.9 billion records that were stolen from national public data. These stolen records includes a person's full name, address, date of birth, social security number, and phone number, along with alternative names and birth dates. If you weren't taking precautions with your personal information online before, this should be a huge wake-up call. As I said just a second ago, 2.9 billion records were stolen. Considering the United States only has 326 million people, when the security breach happened, you would have had about a 900% chance to get your content stolen. You've never been more vulnerable online than you are right now. But don't worry, Aura's got you. You see, Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, email, or social security number on the dark web. They're gonna let me know fast if anybody tries to use the information to access my credit card or bank accounts. And for peace of mind, they gave me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. They also provide a bunch of other features to keep you safe online, all inside one little app. If you guys are interested, you can go down to the link description below and in the comments below. The link is aura.com/Luke's Car Talk to try 14 days for free. Alright, now back to the video. While Jobs wasn't exactly breaking the law, his actions could be seen as getting around what the law was meant to prevent. Second would be his potential violation. Even though Jobs was exploiting the grace period, he could have been at risk for other violations. For example, if he was pulled over, he would need to provide valid registration documents, and without a license plate, he may have faced increased scrutiny from the law enforcement. Third is civil liability. In the event of an accident, the lack of a license license plate could have complicated matters of identification and insurance claims. Fourth is going to be the tax implications. Frequently leasing new vehicles might have had a tax consequence that could have drawn attention from financial authorities. And fifth is going to be corporate responsibility. As a high CEO profile, Jobs' actions could have been scrutinized more heavily, potentially affecting Apple's corporate image. It's worth noting that law enforcement officials were likely unaware of Jobs' strategy. The fact that Jobs wasn't penalized shows the law's reluctance to challenge such a prominent figure. The legal community was divided on this issue. Some argued that Jobs was simply taking advantage of a poorly written law, while it's not illegal in itself. Others contended that while his actions were not exactly illegal, they were an abuse of the system. Interestingly, the situation highlighted the challenges lawmakers face in creating legislation that can't be exploited in unintended ways. It demonstrates how even seemingly simple regulations can have loopholes that resourceful individuals might exploit. This case serves as an interesting study in the institution of law, technology, and individual behavior, raising questions on the boundaries between legal compliance and ethnic responsibility. As Apple grew into the technological juggernaut we know today, Jobs' license plate hack faded into the background, eclipsed by the company's revolutionary products and his visionary leadership. But the tale remains an interesting example of how even the most successful entrepreneurs can find unconventional ways to overcome obstacles and achieve their goals. The story of Steve Jobs and his license plate loophole is a testament to the power of thinking outside of the box, and a reminder that sometimes the most mundane challenges can be an opportunity in disguise.